So hi guys, welcome to my channel. As we learned in our previous class about the eukaryotes and prokaryotes, so now we'll move on to the next topic and we'll discuss about the shape of a cell. So if someone will ask you what exactly does a cell look like, so we'll say that we have saw it in our books or we have looked on the internet that the basic shape of a cell is spherical. But that's not true, guys. The shape of a cell truly depends on what function is a cell is carrying. So it depends on so every cell performs different functions. So every cell will have a different shape. So now let's take example of white blood cells. So white blood cells are commonly known as leukocytes and they are present in our body, and we say that the white blood cells are the soldiers of the body, or they are the defense mechanism of the body. As they fight against the infections, they destroy the germs. So these are basically the white blood cells. So these leukocytes are spherical in shape. So they have a function, that is they circulate the blood. So when they are circulating the blood, at that point of time their shape is spherical in shape. But then in some other conditions, they create pseudopodias, and at that point of time their shape becomes irregular. So it depends solely on the function, like what function is the cell performing, and it will decide its shape. So when leukocyte is circulating blood, so it will be in the spherical shape, and when it will form pseudopodia to grasp something, the shape will become irregular. So there are like 5 to 6 different shapes of a cell. One is polyhedral. So polyhedral is that the cell will have 8 to 10 or 14 sides. Second shape is discoidal. So the RBCs, that is the red blood cells, erythrocytes, so their shape is discoidal. Third is spindle shapes. So we have smooth muscle fibers. So the smooth muscle fibers are the basic example of a spindle shaped cell. Now the fourth shape is elongated. So that is our nerve cells are basically elongated in shape. Fifth is spherical one, that is the egg of plants or animals. So mainly animals, sorry. So the spherical shape is the the shape of an egg, like an ostrich, the cell of an ostrich. So it is spherical in shape. Now the branched. So the last shape is the branch one. So these 5 or 6 shapes are the different shapes of a cell. Now coming to the next part, that is size of a cell. So size of a cell can be very small or can be very large. There is not a definite kind of range in which the size of a cell will fall. It can be the smallest, it can be the largest. So we'll learn about the 2 of the extremes, that is the smallest one. So the smallest cell is bacterial mycoplasma. It is around 0.1 micrometer. So you can imagine then how small it will be. And the largest one is a cell of an ostrich. It is usually 18 to 20 centimeter. So the smallest and the largest cells. Now coming to the next part, or the main part of this chapter, we'll now learn about the structure of the different organelles. We learn about different organelles, their structure and what are their functions. So guys, when we talk about cell, so there are like 3 common regions that we can find in each of the cells, and these 3 common regions are cell membrane, cytoplasm and nucleus. In our previous class also I told you about the cell membrane, which is the outer boundary of a cell. I also told you about cytoplasm, which is the liquid inside the cell membrane, in which all the cell organelles like nucleus, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, ये वहां उसके अंदर in that liquid ये वहां होते हैं settled. And the third one is the nucleus, which I told you it is the brain of the cell, which is mainly control the functions of the cell, or it has the genetic information. So one by one we'll learn about all these three. So for now, in this class, we'll start with cell membrane. So cell membrane is also known as plasma membrane. Now I have written here unit membrane. So the cell membrane is only of one layer. Unit means one. So cell membrane is only of one layer, not bilayer, triple layer. It is only of one layer. That is why it is also known as, it is a unit membrane. Now coming to its composition, what is it made of? So cell membrane is basically made of two things, two substances. One is phospholipids and one is proteins. Now what is phospholipids? So lipids is another name for fats. And now phospho. So when the lipids are attached to phosphate group, it is known as phospholipid. Now what is phosphate group? So when 4 phosphorus combined, it makes P4, that is known as phosphate. And when the phosphate combines with the lipids, it is known as phospholipids. So the cell membrane is made up of phospholipids and the proteins are embedded in the phospholipids, in the bilayer of the phospholipids. So there are like two layers of phospholipids and the proteins are embedded in it. So this is the composition of a cell membrane. They makes up a unit, one layer, single membrane. So now we are done with the structure part. Now coming to the function. So these are the walls of my home, and these are the walls. These are protecting me from, let's say, heat and cold, rain. So same function is performed by the plasma membrane, or say cell membrane. It also protects the cell from the, or the organelles of the cell from the external environment. Second, coming to the, like, these walls give a proper structure to our home. They provide a proper structure, proper shape to our home. So in that particular sense, the cell membrane also gives structure and shape to a cell. Okay. Now if these walls, they helps us in, particular, to keep our furniture, to keep, our things in a particular or defined, organized manner. So the same way, cell membrane also perform this function. All of the organelles which we have, listed earlier also, and we will discuss it in the further classes. So all these organelles can be settled in organized manner. They have their particular, they are located at a particular location. They're all well settled, and this is mainly because of the cell membrane. Now the last function that we'll be talking about, it is the cell membrane acts as a selectively permeable membrane. What is selectively permeable membrane? That means it will allow some of the things to come in, and it will, allow some of the things to get out of the cell, to leave the cell. So now we all surf internet, we all do. Okay, what we do, we see a lot of videos, and we see a lot of information on the internet. It is dependent on us, what information are we storing in, and what information is are not of our important to us, and we neglect that. So this is, we are selecting that what information is beneficial for my brain, that will help me grow, and what information I do not want this information, so I will ignore that. I will not take it inside my brain, I will neglect it. So this is kind of a selectively permeable function, that I am allowing some of the information to go inside my brain, and which are not important to my brain for my growth, I will neglect that. Okay, so the same function is, cell membrane performs the same function. It will allow some of the useful substances to come into the cell, oxygen, water, food, and it will allow some harmful substances or say waste substances to get out of the cell. And there are neighboring cells, they will communicate, they will exchange their secretions. So this is also performed by the cell membrane. So these are the functions which are performed by cell membrane. Now when we talk about the selectively permeable membrane, it also helps maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is a condition when the external environment is changing continuously, but the internal environment, that is the environment inside the cell, won't change. It will remain constant. So when the external environment, that is outside of the cell, will change, but the cell won't change its environment. Its internal environment will remain the same, constant. So this condition is known as homeostasis, and this is achieved because the cell membrane has a property of selectively permeable membrane. So now we'll revise what we have learned in today's class. So what we learned, that a shape of a cell is dependent on what function the cell will be performing. Now we discussed about the different shape of cells. It can be polyhedral, it can be discoidal, that is RBCs. It can be spindle-shaped, that example is smooth muscle fiber. It can be elongated in shape, that is the nerve cells. It can be spherical in shape, that is the egg cells. And then it can be branched also. Now cell size will also vary. It can be smallest and it can be largest, and inke beech mein bhi it can be fall, So the smallest cell is bacterial mycoplasma. The largest cell is cell of an ostrich. Now, so every cell will be different in structure, will be different in shape, will be different in size, but the three regions will be common in all eukaryotic cells. What three regions are? Cell membrane, cytoplasm and nucleus. We'll see cell membrane first. So cell membrane is a single layer membrane. That is why it's also known as unit membrane. Its composition is made up of phospholipids plus proteins. What are phospholipids? Lipids are basically fats. So the layer of lipids which are attached with the phosphate group, P4. This is phospholipids, and the proteins are embedded in the bilayer of the phospholipids. This is the composition of cell membrane. Now coming to the function. First function, the cell membrane, the outer covering, protects the cell from the external environment. Second, it gives cell the structure and the shape. Third, all the organelles, cell organelles, can be settled in the organized manner, in a defined manner because of cell membrane. Fourth, it acts as a selectively permeable membrane, that is, it only allows the useful substances to come in and the waste to, it lets out all the waste substances. Also, it helps in communication, and it has pores. The plasma membrane has pores, so it can exchange the secretions or communicate with the adjacent or the neighborhood cells. So now we learned a term, that is homeostasis. So homeostasis is achieved via the property of the cell membrane. Which property is this? Selective permeability. So homeostasis is basically when the external, that is the environment outside the cell, is changing continuously, but the internal environment would not change. It will remain constant. So this property or this state is achieved by this property, this characteristic, which is selective permeability. So guys, this was the today's class. I hope you have understood everything, and if not, you can always mention it in comments. So I'll meet you in the next class.